And this afternoon, hello, everyone. I hope you fit lunch into the pieces of that caucus of the whole time. We are going to talk about fees some more with Lauren Hibbert. Thanks for joining us. I think we have a pretty comprehensive document on our page from you.
Yes, and I have paper copies for everyone as well.
Thank you.
Spreadsheets.
Representative Sims, would you like a paper copy?
It's a big spreadsheet.
There are, no, sure.
I have them for everyone. Oh, teasing. Okay. For the record, Lauren Hibbert, Secretary of State, Deputy Secretary of State, and representing the Office of Professional Regulation as well in this capacity. I do have board fee spreadsheets for folks, and I thought we'd start with the board fees and then move to the advisor fees.
Yeah.
I would like.
Scott.
Leave one for Scott.
Yeah. Thank you.
Might need some more.
I compliment you.
No. You're welcome. Yes, sure.
Size font.
You're welcome.
No, we have two. Okay.
I have another one. All of a sudden, no, I can't do
I
it.
think we have more than enough.
Is there one extra?
Yes.
I get that.
Yes.
Like,
Okay, there are more. Okay.
I thought more was better than less, so I opted for more.
I pulled out my glasses and I don't even need them. Thank you. This is great.
So, dear committee, I am in a situation where I am now on the cusp of 46, which means that my distance glasses no longer work unless I'm driving. And I need bifocals, but then I can't figure out what to do with the computer. So, and I'm in queue for an optometry appointment, assuming that, yeah, this is the problem. I didn't understand.
Smart for all folks. Sorry to interrupt you.
So I have a lot of sensitivity at this particular moment to type size, which is why this is this scale.
We thank you for that.
So I think I just jumped into giving people the spreadsheet without really talking about what the plan was. From my perspective, I'm happy for it to shift as the committee needs it to today. But my plan was to walk through what we're thinking for specific board fees and profession types within those boards. And then to move to advisor fees, again, referencing back my testimony from last week, which was we do think that we need a fee adjustment across the majority of the OPR professions. We are looking at a fee adjustment based on the CPI, understanding that that might shift if that's what the committee would like it to shift to, but that's what our proposal is built under. And looking at, again, referencing my testimony from last week, our board budgets are siloed, meaning nursing fees have to support nurses, dentist fees have to support dentists and dental hygienists and assistants. And then we have the advisor pool, projecting the deficit that I talked about last week and trying to make each board budget whole. So I've given you about 50% of the information that I have because I also have in front of me each board's budget. So my plan is to go first into accountancy and talk about where the accountancy budget is and where we're projecting it to be if there's not a fee increase, then to talk about the proposed fee increases, and then to talk about where we're expecting the budget to be if we do the fee increases as proposed. Does that sound like a reasonable roadmap? So, jumping right in to accountancy.
And actually, if you could also intersperse, I know that you've been checking in with all of your folks.
Sure.
Since last you were here. So if you want to sort of intersperse some of that commentary, that would be great as well.
Sure. So what I've done is I have emailed all of our board chairs the fee proposals and my presentation that I made to you last week. I've heard from about 50% of the board chairs back, And I'm speaking to boards periodically over the next couple of weeks. Tomorrow, I'm speaking with engineers, for instance. The week after that, I think I'm speaking with 2 or 3 boards, and then the week after that, other boards as they come scheduled. So I haven't communicated with all licensees yet, or certainly not all licensees. I don't know if I'll ever communicate with all licensees directly, but I haven't communicated with all board members yet, is what I meant to say. So for accountancy, their budget is currently projected to be negative $77,000 at the end of this fiscal year. And I'm just going to explain what's before you. Obviously, accounting is its own profession. Then the second column is all the different fee types in accountancy. Then the number of individuals licensed in those fee types when they renew, what their current renewal is and their current initial application fee is, what we're proposing to change, the dollar amount of the increase, the percentage amount of the increase, and the portions that are highlighted in orange or yellow are above what is the inflation rate since the last time the fee was adjusted. So that's my roadmap there. So for accountancy, for the most part, we're recommending a $25 increase in their renewal rate and their initial application rate. That is the groups that will be most affected, will be those certified public accountants and the accounting firms. So the certified public accountants make up the majority of this profession. And the initial rate is above inflation by 25%. And the fee was last adjusted in 2019. So the inflation rate since then is 18%. The largest amount of adjustment is for the firms. These are accountancy firms. And the increase is $40. So that would take them from $400 to $440. But again, the percentage increase is less than inflation. And I have not heard from the chair of this board, but I anticipate that I will.
What is SOL?
A sole proprietor, that means.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought maybe it was an acronym for something special in accounting, but
It very well could have been, but it's.
that's again.
Yeah, are there only 3 RPAs?
That is correct.
3?
We only have 3 registered public accountants.
Goodness.
I think a lot of people are using CPAs for that function.
Wow. That surprises me because I think there used to be many more 10 or 15 years ago.
I think that's an area where the profession has shifted a little bit. And people are seeing value in the CPA credential that they didn't see before.
And again, if we were to adopt these increases, it would address the deficit in the fund.
Yes. So what this would do is what we're projecting now is in 2025, we'd be at positive $24,000. And this would mean that we'd be at positive $67,000. So it would this would build our fund for this particular profession. These increases would build our fund to a place where we felt really like we were in a healthy place. And for us, a healthy place is at least 2 years of operating expenses in the fund because of our odd year and even year, the meaty year and the lean year. We really are trying to have a 2-year cycle in the fund. And the total expenses in this fund for this year were $142,000. So if we make these fee adjustments, we'll get to a healthy place by 2026.
And the expenses are specific to accounting firm support. It's like licensing and credentialing and
So
things related to the field.
yes, and So some of the fees are directly related to the profession. You may remember that I talked about direct fees, direct expenses and indirect expenses. So the direct expenses are the costs of enforcement, so the complaints and the investigations and the prosecutions, the dues paid for the profession, and per diems. And then the indirect expenses, we take, this is a little bit of a simplification, but we take the OPR operating expense and divide it by the number of licensees. So, and then multiply that for the number of licensees in accountancy.
Representative Brennigan?
And so I still don't understand why they're so far behind.
So they are far behind for the reasons that I testified last week, which is on whole, we're behind because the expenses of OPR have grown and we have not grown our licensees at the same rate to cover our expenses.
Then are most of these
Yes.
where? Wow, can't wait to hear the rest of it. CPAs can afford this.
I think this will not feel like a shocking amount to them. But there are professions where, as we get down the list, you'll hear me say this will not make the fund in a healthy place.
Yeah.
And we are choosing to not propose to you a fee that would, because it would be too painful to the profession. And that leads into the conversations, you know, of what is the long-term model for funding OPR, and really the need to have regular fee check-ins. You'll see a theme. You know, we did a fee bill in 19, but that was a long time ago now, comparatively. And then many of our fees have not been touched for far longer than that. So,
Thank you.
Representative Anthony?
Thank you.
What you're implying, Lauren, is that there's some considerable cross subsidies across the advisory model disciplines.
yes, that is correct.
And
Because
is there any way to get a sense of how profound that is? Because either I would have to go look literally profession by profession and say, okay, so where are you falling behind and by how much? And who's making it up? Or I depend on you. I'm an equity freak, and so I kind of worry about cross subsidy.
well, so
And do you want to,
I'm sorry, I
want to
don't.
wait on that question until we get to the
we can
shared, or do you want to start that while we're on the board fees?
we can start it now if that is okay with you, Madam Chair. Yes, the boards silo their fees and the advisors do not. And that was a very, I would say, brilliant legislative solution to regulating smaller professions. Because the costs of regulation, if you're a small profession, get skewed if you are siloed. And it works, the board model works better if you're a larger profession. So you'll see when we get to the advisors that in some of our professions, we have 100 licensees. And if they had to hire an attorney to prosecute their cases, hire an investigator, hire a licensing administrator, you know, it works for them to be part of the umbrella model. And arguably, I think it works for our board model as well. They could not provide the level of public protection and public service that they do if they had to entirely staff their own independent board with their own independent staff. So, and I'll talk about our rationale for fees. If it's okay, I'll bifurcate your question and talk about the rationale for fees in the advisor pool when we get there. Is that okay? For allied mental health, this is a fairly large profession for us. They are currently in the negative $241,000. They have been in the negative since 2018, if not before. Last year, they ended their fiscal year at negative 616. We did adjust their fees in 19, but we did not do a full adjustment because of the profession and the earning potential of that profession and the workforce considerations of mental health care. We are proposing a $25 increase for the roster, a $20 increase for licensed marriage and family therapists, and a $35 increase for licensed clinical mental health counselors in their renewals. A little bit different numbers, but a similar adjustment to their initial applications. The only place where this is above the CPI is for the roster with the initial application where it is 25%. With this fee adjustment, they will not be in the positive until fiscal year 2027. But we think that if we tried to get them into the positive faster than that not only would it not be well embraced by our licensee community, but it could create barriers to entry into the occupation, and we don't want to do that.
And how does the telehealth licensing that we did last few years impact this fund and these fees?
So I don't have the number in front of me, but before COVID, if somebody wanted to provide telehealth to somebody who was located in Vermont, they would have needed a Vermont license. And we know that our numbers went down with the COVID flexibilities, which allowed an out-of-state professional to practice here without a license during the state of emergency, and actually extended even to now. And then also last session, we created the telehealth licensing structure. So people who are licensed in another state who want to provide telehealth here are now going to be able to be registered starting in July of this year at a reduced fee to do telehealth for a reduced number of patients. So we don't exactly know the implications yet because we haven't introduced the telehealth. It goes live in July. So we'll start to have numbers on that. But we do know that we lost some licensees in this field. And that is true across all of our healthcare professions with the COVID flexibilities of allowing someone to practice here without a license during COVID. And again, as we're talking about it, I think that was a very good public policy to make at the time because we knew that we were going to have a large strain on our healthcare workforce and that we would need to bring people in. We knew that, for instance, we're also talking about someone who normally would drive to Dartmouth to receive their primary care or their care. And because of the restrictions on travel and then also people being more home-based and not going into institutions, the providers at Dartmouth all needed the access to practice here without needing to get licensure and to be able to do it, tomorrow. So that it was a good legislative policy to those COVID flexibilities, but it did impact our finances. Any other questions on allied mental health? Okay.
I guess my other question is, do you have a sense of the mix of sort of independent folks versus folks who are having their licenses purchased by a larger provider? We don't ask that question in the renewal, and I don't know what the percentage is. In this profession, in the allied mental health profession, I do know that a large percentage of this group of licensees works for the designated agency. And that might be a question for the designated agencies, whether they reimburse. But also there's a good number here who are solo practitioners who own their own small business. And that is something to think about too, because if you own your own small business, your licensing fee is a business expense. So you have some
there is some ability to deduct that from your taxes in a different way than if you're an employee and your institution does not reimburse you for licensing fees. So it's just another thing to think about when you're thinking about fees.
Yeah, just, you may remember this, and a few people may remember, last time we went through telehealth, there was discussion in committee of, wouldn't some people just not bother with an actual license and just get a telehealth license because it was cheaper? And I guess we ended on a fairly even place but we spent some discussion on trying to get the right balance. And Representative George Till, Dr. Till said, well, some of these people won't bother with a regular license, they'll just get a telehealth license because it's cheaper. But we're past the COVID restrictions, the strict ones, and so, I mean, it seems to me we're in okay shape, but anytime you want to add anything about that, glad to hear it, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of, I guess I just want clarity on what you're thinking of in okay shape in terms of people's access to healthcare.
I don't see anything on your chart that would indicate to me that we made the wrong decision last year. 2 years ago or whatever it was, you know. So, I mean, I don't have a comment beyond that.
Yeah.
I mean, I was looking for flaws in another year to determine if.
Well, what we did was perfect.
Oh, good.
No, I don't know that I have enough data to know that yet.
That's good to know. It's always nice to have a compliment once in a while.
Well, and I wonder if doing this more regularly would allow us to sort of tweak when we do have data to learn better or
Yes.
Yeah.
or our problems catch up with us.
Which brings me perfectly to architects. Architects have not been updated since 2005, which it's very easy to Monday morning quarterback the decision to not adjust the fees. And I can say that we should have adjusted the fees before today. And I only say Monday morning quarterback because the Super Bowl is coming. I'm not a particular Super Bowl fan, but I understand it's part of the cultural zeitgeist. So we have 1,400, give or take, architects. Their fund is currently in the negative 357. They currently pay $155 for a renewal and $80 for an initial application. Their fees are some of the lowest in our shop. And we are proposing raising their fees dramatically. Those should have been yellow. I'll make them yellow for the next time. We are proposing to increase their fees by 35% for the renewal and 56% for the initial. And so that ends up being a $55 increase for the renewal and a $45 increase for the initial application. I'll just say with another factor that we think about sometimes is how difficult is the initial application. And for architects, it's actually a relatively difficult application because they submit plans and we don't, but our board reviews the plans and actually has to have a hands-on role in approving the application. So with this fee proposal, the 35% for renewal and 56% for initial, they are not out of the negative until off of my grid. They are still projected to be in the negative in 2029. In 2029, they would be projected to be in the negative at 285.
Representative Sims?
Are they not red because although the percent increase is large, it's still less than inflation?
Possibly, yeah.
And remind me again, we make up these shortfalls with general funds or through the advisory fund? Like how are we sustaining a $370,000 deficit?
So, yes, you're right. Those don't need to be orange. And how we are doing it is, although we're not sharing the money, we're keeping the money separate. The money is floating in, or borrowing, yes. And, but we are at a point where we are in the negative on the whole. And that's why, I'm here before you today.
Representative Odie?
What is the cost to borrow?
Well, it's not borrowing with any, interest rate or anything like that.
Internal.
It's just internally, we keep it siloed for record keeping, but the money is, it's all within the OPR fund.
So what are you not doing currently? If you aren't getting what you need to run the program, then, and you're borrowing, so.
From another program.
From another program. I shouldn't have said we were borrowing.
All right.
That was linguistically confusing. We have a large fund and we keep the budgets siloed, but the money is a little bit more flexible and dollar to dollar. But and the truth is the majority of our money is used at a general level across all of our applications. Those are indirect expenses. It's really at the end of the budget season where we start to say, okay, we spent, $2 million on staff expenses. I'm making up that number. And then we say, this is how much the Board of Architects paid for staff expenses. If that makes sense.
And do you imagine architects will have a challenge paying this $155?
I think, I don't know, my team is still working on how much architects are paid, the application and renewal fees are in our sister states. I think our fees are low compared to other states. And I think that architects, on whole, can support this fee increase.
You don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but did anybody go to the administration and plead your case? Let them know what was happening, how far in the hole you are, and that you had to borrow from one fund to the other, and did anybody do that?
So we have been very clear with the administration. They do a budget review of our office every year, and I was in that review this year. And we did talk with them about I don't want to say crisis because I don't want to be a calamitous, but the situation in the OPR bill and in the OPR budget. And we did talk with with finance and management about the fact that we may be seeking a fee increase this year.
Their response? Were they sympathetic? They seemed to understand, or?
I don't remember the exact words, so I don't want to characterize it incorrectly, but I think it was a little bit like, if you need to do that, you can ask the legislature to do that, I think was basic.
Madam Chair, are we going to have the finance and management people in?
Sure, yeah.
I really think we should.
Yeah. We had a pretty comprehensive conversation about fees at the last joint fiscal committee meeting with Commissioner Gresham, but it would be helpful to have him back in to discuss this. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I'm struck looking between like architects and accountants and a few other folks who I sort of imagine to be professionals. I don't really know their exact salaries. I'm making lots of assumptions, but I'm thinking about, workplaces that don't have sort of salary scales built in, and different job descriptions that might be sort of similar somehow wind up getting raised at different levels because of different people are differently persuasive when they sit in those jobs. And then at some point, someone comes in and does some degree of rational level setting. And then some people are upset and some people are really psyched because they got a raise that they hadn't asked for. And if you gave any consideration to doing that kind of level setting on the fee structure.
We have. And I think what you're seeing is some limitations with the way that the budget is set up with the siloed board, so there's only a limit to how much you can do that. So when we get to nursing, you'll hear me say that, and I'll just jump right there, that in nursing, we did absolutely think about the earning potential of an LNA versus an APRN, and the differences in what is feasible for them to pay for. It's harder to do in a profession where there's not something to compare it to, or when we're just trying to make that particular profession's in a healthy, stable place. And that is something that we can do in the advisor model. The advisor model is actually better built to think about equity, earning capacity, and the true cost of regulating each profession. Because the professions do have changes. You know, it is more expensive to regulate a funeral home than it is to regulate an LNA in some ways, because with the funeral home, we need to have an inspector who goes in and does inspections. If there is something that goes wrong, there's more people potentially to interview depending on the circumstances. And so we can think about that in a better way in the advisor pool. And I don't know if that's responsive to your question.
Apropos of your last comment, Madam Chair, looking at a couple of these, architects, engineers versus all the nursing professions. I've got good friends who are architects and engineers, but vis-a-vis your comment, or maybe it was Carolyn's, we don't, it's not invisible, but we rarely see information about what architects make or what engineers make.
Right.
There's a whole lot of work for them, lots and lots of work for them. It's very different all the nursing ones when the hospitals are under such stress to find adequate staff. And I'm sure we will hear some pushback on particularly trying to register new nurses on, because we desperately need them. And I don't see that this, as we've talked before, in this committee, the difficulties with registering nurses have as much to do with nursing education and the environment in which they work as these fees. But it's a concern. It's something that I pay attention to.
And I'm gonna stop my own philosophizing about it and let you get through.
Okay.
Okay.
That was really about me.
Well, I think there's a lot to chew on in the way that we charge for the cost of public protection and also earning across these really disparate professions. So we have some professions that are, doctorate medical school, and some that are a 6-week training course and pay very different. So it's not apples to oranges. It's like, I don't know what it is. It's not even the same food group. I don't know. So chiropractic. We have 266 chiropractors, arguably one of our smallest board professions. 14,000 was their fund balance, is what we're projecting their fund balance will be at the end of this year. They were negative 40 at the end of last fiscal year. They are on the cusp of positive and negative in our projections, but we still recommend a fee increase. The last time their application was updated was 2001, and the last time their renewal fee was updated was in 2013. So we're recommending a $30 increase or an 11% increase to their renewal and a $25 increase to their application, which is a 13% increase. And with those projections, they still will be on the cusp of positive and negative. They go from red to black every year, but they'll go into a more sustainable pattern. So for instance, in 24, they'll be negative 19, 25, positive 11, 26, negative 22, 27, positive 14, 28, negative 21, and 29, positive 15. So they'll be climbing a little higher each year, which is what we're looking for. Dental. In dentistry is one of our larger professions, and this is a profession with a larger scale of income diversity, I'll say. And in this profession, the fees were last reviewed in 19, and we are recommending a reduction in fees for certain parts of this profession. This is a profession where in the positive, we're projected to be in the negative this year. In 23, we're projected to be negative 85, but then we're projected to be positive in 2024 for the foreseeable future. So in 2024, we're projected to be positive 266. So with the modifications, again, the reduction of some fees and a little modification increase in other fees, we are projected to be less positive in the future. So we are projecting in 2024 to be 286, 2026 to be 428, and in 2028, 555. And just for elimination, the total expense of this board hovers between 300 and 565. That goes back and forth. So we think with these little tweaks, the addition of some increases for dental hygienists, dentists, and dental therapists who we think can afford those small increases and reductions for others, we will get to less of an excess in the fund. Engineering. Engineering has not been adjusted since 2019. And engineering, we are concerned about their fund. In 2023, they are negative 496. Engineers are actually our third largest board at OPR. With the adjustments that we're making, which is an additional increase of $50 for the renewal and $25 for the initial application, both of which are over the CPI since 2019, we still will be in the negative for the foreseeable future. We do not project a positive balance in this board through 2029. And this is the board that I'm talking to tomorrow.
What would it take to be in the positive?
I'm just gonna phone a friend. To be in the positive, how do I?
Can I use your?
Yeah, sorry.
To go all the way to this side. Called fund balance ratio. Or engineers. Yeah, there you go.
We would have to raise it by $92.14. I'd just like to give a public shout out of thanks to Agatha Kessler, who's making me look very smart with these sheets.
Representative Sims and then Demra.
And is an engineer intern usually a 1 or 2 year position, and so
Yeah.
there's never a renewal?
An engineer intern is someone who's starting out at the beginning of their career. Yes, it's not a renewable credential.
I'm sure I
Yes.
did not have a question.
You didn't? Okay.
Thank you.
Can you tell me what these people do?
Engineers?
Yes.
I love that question.
So I'm trying not to be funny, but I have a son who's a chemical engineer, and I don't think he has a license at all. He has a
Right.
great job in New York.
Right.
So
So
what do these people do who need the licenses?
it's usually the signing off of a plan. So if you are going to be a chemical engineer and you sign off on a wastewater system, I mean, or if you're a structural engineer and you are signing the building plan, if you are a civil engineer and you're designing roads, it's the people who are typically signing the plan. And there's lots of engineers who do not ever need to get a license because they're working for a larger group or they're working under somebody else. And it's not a guarantee that you will need a license to do your work as an engineer.
My kid, I'm so proud of him. He has a PhD from Notre Dame.
Wow.
It's not just somebody who
No,
graduated from high school and said, I want to be an engineer. He
no,
has extensive training, but he did, in fact, I just sent him an email to confirm this, but I'm pretty sure he does not have a license
this is,
in New York, the state of New York.
and he probably wouldn't need one here. It's a very unique field and where it's really about executing these public plans or plans that might need to be financed. And I'm probably not the best person to explain the difference of when you need an engineering license and when you don't, but that's my very high level understanding. And so that the majority of people who have PhDs in engineering do not need to get a license.
Okay.
And engineers are incredibly smart, I'll just.
Aren't you an engineer?
Just briefly.
You-
The-
This other life,
It's a warning.
I use briefly.
this other life.
It's an intern.
Use it briefly in a different sense, but to answer your question without tying up the committee. The word that Lauren used was public. When it's civil engineering, structural engineering, septic designs, wastewater, all that sort of stuff, that's stuff that the product basically is interacting with the public. If you're gonna do a structural engineering on a building that's potentially gonna fall down, you ought to be licensed to do it. So there's a public exposure, I guess, and liability exposure that is key to, I think, on where you get licensed and when it's not required.
I didn't know that.
Well, it's okay, that's what it is.
I'm just the mother.
Same with architects.
They never tell you.
They never tell you that.
Anyway, okay, I'll be quiet now. Thanks.
Thank you.
Representative Taylor.
Have any of these, can you tell us if any of these numbers have changed? Like, are we suddenly seeing more engineer interns or less, or are these pretty stable? If you happen to know as you're going through it, it'd be interesting to know what the.
For engineers, because I'm preparing for my presentation tomorrow, I can answer your question, but I can't do it for every group. Engineers are slowly growing in the state of Vermont. So we did lose licensees, I think around 2020. And then we're seeing a slow increase of them currently.
Because, well, I moved from corrections and institutions to this committee. And so I was working or interacting with BGS and places like that worry about engineers and the lack of engineers. And so I'm curious as to whether any of those initiatives have helped to bring in more engineers.
Maybe they have, I don't know, but we are seeing a little bit of an increase of that particular license population.
Good.
Representative Kento.
So there were two asterisks after 2019.
It's a typo.
So why did you choose not to raise the fees to a point where it would cover the fund?
So for this one, what we, and
In this particular category?
yes, in this particular category, we are cognizant of the fact that we raised fees in 19 and did not do it enough. And so what we're trying to do, if we raised the fee in 19 and it wasn't enough, then we're trying to be aware of that and just commit to the professions that we would hopefully be allowed and have a pathway to talk about their fees again in 2 or 3 years and raise them again. Because the feedback that we've received is it would be really helpful if we did these in little pieces, not big chunks, for people's budgets. So that's why.
Thanks.
Anything else on engineering before I jump into land surveying? Land surveyors is a very small profession. It is 229. Their application fee, we are recommending a shift that is perhaps one of our most dramatic. We're saying that their renewal fee should raise by $100, which is 33% increase. And their renewal fee was last shifted in 2015. It actually was reduced in 2015. And their application fee has not been adjusted since 2005. We are recommending a shift in their application fee of $50. And the reason why we are recommending such a large adjustment for them is because their fund balance is in the negative now, currently. It's minus 187, and it's projected to not get it positive in the fund balance, and in fact will get to 236. This is a real problem because they are such a small profession. So if we were going back to how to make them whole, if we wanted to make them whole, we would need to raise their fees by approximately $1,000. Obviously, we're not going to do that. So we are recommending, though, a larger increase to their fees. And it will not get them to,
Representative Andrews, who hides behind Representative Canfield.
I'm curious if, would it make sense to put land surveyors into a non-board category? And what would that look like? What would the difference be?
So it's an excellent question. We have done that with other professions that are running at a significant deficit. We like to at OPR to do it in a friendly manner with the profession. So that is a conversation that I will be having with the board when I meet with them. I suspect that they would prefer to stay the board model, but the fiscal implications of where they are is probably not sustainable to be at a board model. And the mechanics of how that would happen is I would need to ask for legislation modifying all of their statutes. And then we would make the operational shift on the back end with their budget and the way that their professionals handle it.
Why, I mean, this is hypothetical, but why do you think that they would want to stay as a board model?
Well, because at the board model, there is a perceived and somewhat true more control over the profession by the board. The board hears their own disciplinary cases, is a more concrete author of the administrative rules in the administrative rulemaking process. I mean, our lawyers write the administrative rules, meet with the advisor professions. I don't want it to sound like we aren't consulting with the advisors. We absolutely are. We couldn't write the rules if we didn't consult with the advisors, but and still going through all the same public process. But the boards, they meet a little bit more frequently, although we're meeting with our advisor professions quite frequently, and actually now have a public meeting for all of our advisor professions so that the public has access to the conversations that we're having with the advisors. And the professions that we have shifted recently have been funeral and all the funeral directors and funeral personnel and crematory disposition, and barbers and cosmetologists, estheticians and nail technicians. And with the barbers and cosmetologists, they really were open to the concept. The board was open to the concept of dissolving, in large part because they felt like they didn't have significant business to justify meeting every month or every other month. And they were excited about the concept of being able to move a little bit faster than having to wait for a board meeting to move issues along. And I think that's worked fairly well for their profession. The funeral board was more hesitant to move to the advisor model. Their profession is technically complicated and complex. But their budget was at a significant deficit, and I think they made the decision at OPR's recommendation. And I was at the table when we were having these conversations because of primarily due to budget. And I don't think that we have had any negative outcome as a result of that transition. We've had a very complicated disciplinary matter that involved, cremains and management of cremains and being sent to the wrong people. And it was a very complicated, professionally complicated case and also hard case. And we managed that just fine through the advisor. So it's just, it's a complicated conversation with the board because typically our boards are there because they have been in existence for a really long time and there's prestige and all of that. All right. Nursing. This is the one, the big one. Nursing, again, there's 4 different profession types in nursing. The LNA, which is the licensed nursing assistant, licensed practical nurse, registered nurse, and then the advanced practice registered nurse. I'll just say that an advanced practice registered nurse has to hold 2 credentials. They hold the registered nurse credential and the advanced practice credential. They stack. So an APRN pays both of those fees. Just something to keep in mind. We have almost 14,000 registered nurses. As I talked about last week, this is about a third down from where we were before we entered the compact. And the entering of the interstate compact for nursing did impact our overall fund and the nursing fund in particular. So we are recommending a fee increase in this profession. They are currently projected, the last fiscal year, they were negative $3,350,000. This year, we're projecting negative $2,821,000. So we're asking you to consider raising their fees as modestly as we can. And so we're asking for $25 increase for a renewal fee for both the licensed practical nurse and the APRN, a $35 increase for the RN, and a $10 increase for the licensed nursing assistant. And a $25 increase for application fees and a $5 increase for the LNA. Even with these fee impacts, given our licensing numbers, we are not projecting coming out of the red through fiscal year 2029. In fact, even with these fee adjustments, we're projecting being in the negative in 2029, $5 million.
Representative Beck.
Lauren, do you recall what the fees were before we increased them in 2019?
Yes, I should have them totally memorized, but I think that we did not adjust the LNA fee in 19. I think the advanced practice nurse was 100. I think that I can double check this and confirm, but I think the registered nurse was 170 and I think the licensed practical nurse was 160.
Okay, thank you.
But I'll confirm that.
Okay.
Representative Anthony.
What's not here, unless I'm missing it, is the compact registration?
So that is, there's not a separate fee for the compact registration.
Okay.
When you enter into your application, I'm a nurse and I want to apply for a license or I want to renew my license, you're given the option. Do you want to register for the compact?
Okay.
Do you want a single state
Not a
license
different-
or a multi-state license? And you can choose, but
Okay,
the fee
but-
is the same.
Okay. And the other part of my question is physician's assistants.
We do not regulate them. They are regulated by the Board of Medical Practice.
Canfield.
Do we know?
So we don't have any adjudicating responsibility either when something goes wrong.
Well, the Board of Medical Practice does.
Yeah, but you don't.
But I don't incur
OPR
any
does not.
expenses.
Thank
Yes,
you.
we don't incur any expenses for physician's assistants. We don't receive any revenue. We have no expenses.
Do you have an idea how many nurses went to the compact?
I'll have a much better idea after March 31st when the RN renewal is completed. But I can tell you that we lost approximately a third of our licensed practical nurses when they went through their renewal. And looking at the numbers and where we were at about the same time, that's what we're projecting. So the answer is no. But we used to have, I can tell you this is not a true number. We used to have between 16 and 17,000 registered nurses. We are decreased by about 5,000, but I'm projecting that we're going to be lower than that after the renewal is done. Yeah.
Is there an opportunity to adjust the size of the administration of the board accordingly? I'm just trying to think about this creatively.
Yeah. So yes, maybe, and no, definitely.
Great.
The administration of the board is very small. We have an executive officer for nursing. I never would advocate that we do not have an executive officer for nursing. The complexity of nursing questions that come into our office and the level of just because they're our largest licensees and they're clinical providers, I think we really do need to have an executive officer who is a nurse. And then we have 2 licensing administrators committed to this profession. And that is, it's not enough. We are in the midst of a very complicated renewal with criminal background checks being required for the very first time. And it is really hard to manage all of the calls that are coming in. And then the rest of the costs are our general staff costs. So it's the director of OPR and the general counsel of OPR and the prosecutors and investigators. We do have more, I want to be careful because I don't want you to hear me say that nurses commit unprofessional conduct more. They do not, but they are a large percentage of our enforcement costs. And with the compact, we have enforcement costs over people that we have never received a licensing dollar for because they're practicing in our state. I don't have those numbers for you, but we know that there are people who are here on a compact. We're prosecuting people who are here on a compact license for drug diversion or patient harm or sexual boundaries. And we have a responsibility to move forward with those public protection actions so that their practice is limited here, even though we are not receiving any revenue from that nurse, if that makes sense. So we for most of our professions, we receive revenue from every licensee, but for nursing, every licensee every person who's practicing in the state. But for nursing, we do not receive revenue for every person that's practicing, but we still have enforcement responsibilities.
So in the interest of us getting through this document today, which I think would be helpful to just have an overview of the whole thing today, I am flagging those board professions that seem like they're never going to cover their costs, even if we increase fees, to have a separate conversation about what we should do about that. And want to let folks know that we have some more nursing compacts that are going to come over from the healthcare committee fairly soon. So we'll have a lot of time to dig into compacts and how they work and the good policy of them all.
So, optometry.
Indeed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Optometrists, we have 167 optometrists. The last time their application was increased was 2005, and the last time their renewal was increased was in 2020. I actually believe we reduced their fee in 2020, just so you all are aware. We shouldn't have reduced their fee in 2020, and we're now recommending that we increase their fee by $50 in both their application and renewal. This is because they're currently, last year, fiscal year 2022, they were negative 29,000, and they're projected to not be positive again in 2029. If we change their fees as proposed, they would not reach positive until 2029, when they would be positive by $1,000. And I just want to be careful. I was a little flip just now about we shouldn't have changed their fee in 2020. I actually think, going back to our earlier conversation, if we had the opportunity to increase and reduce fees on a methodical method, then we would see that we could make course corrections depending on what's happening in the marketplace. And I just want to say that a lot of these projections are difficult because we're projecting human behavior and marketplace actions, and it's hard to know how it's going to go. Osteopathic physicians, those are the physicians that we regulate outside of the medical practice board. The last time that their application fee was set was in 2001, and their renewal rate was in 2019. So we are recommending, again, a very small increase here, a $50 increase to their renewal, plus a reduction in their initial application. So we've run this with the numbers of the number of new applications versus the number of renewals, and we think that it would be sustainable. And then a $15 increase to the renewal rate for the temporary, and a $10 increase for the temporary. And their budget is currently healthy. So we're just making modifications of their fees to keep them healthy. So right now, last year they were in the positive $6,000. Net, we're projecting them to be in the positive $125,000. And with this projection, we just keep them even more healthy budget, so that they would be staying within, I'm just double checking us here. So their total expenses are approximately, on average, about 100,000 per year, and we're trying to get their fund balance to be, with these proposals, they'll be between 125 and 272 over the course of time. So we're trying to get them to where we have 2 years of operating budget in their fund. And this profession does have the ability to pay those fees. Pharmacy, this is another profession where we are recommending some reductions in the fees, and we also are recommending some increases. You'll see that we are proposing reduction of fees on people and increasing fees on institutions. And some of the rationale for that is the difference between the earning potential of people versus institutions, but also the complexity of prosecuting some of these really large pharmaceutical, frequently compounding institutions or retail drug chains is significant. And with these modifications, their fund balance will not get to a 2-year operating budget until fiscal year 2029, but that is our goal. Without these fee recommendations, they're not projected to get at a 2-year operating budget. Psychology. In psychology, we are recommending a fee increase. Psychology, there's two different types of credentials. There's the psychology master and the psychology doctorate. They're, I would say, a medium-sized profession for us. And they're currently, last fiscal year, they were in the negative $187,000. They're projected to stay in the negative through fiscal year 2029, culminating in a negative 398. And so we are recommending that their fees increase by $50 each for the renewal and $25 each for the initial. The last time their fees were adjusted for the application was in 2007, and for the renewal was in 2011. With these fee recommendations, they still are not projected to get out of the negative. It's much, well, it's better. I can't say it's much better. So with these fee recommendations, they would be at negative 238,000 as opposed to 390,000. And the reason why we're recommending these, again, fairly modest recommendations is we really are very cognizant of raising fees in the mental health professions and the healthcare professions. So this is another one, Madam Chair, for an asterisk by it, if you don't mind. Any questions on psychology? Real estate, we're in a healthy fund balance, but we're cautious about doing a dramatic fee reduction. And the reason why is we know that we've had an increase of licensees in this particular profession due to the housing boom, or I don't know how to explain it, but the large increase in all of our homes. And so we had more people become licensed so they could participate in that marketplace. And so currently they are at a positive fund balance. Last year they ended with positive 1.2 and they're projected without any modification to be at the end of fiscal year 2029, 2.5. And that is really more than what they should be having. So we would like to reduce the cost of the real estate broker license and the real estate salesperson license. Again, you'll see the theme of reducing or trying to mitigate for the individual as opposed to the business. And we do not recommend reducing it more than that because we are anticipating, particularly if we go into a recession, that we will lose licensees and that the number of licensees is not stable. And then the last one for board is veterinary. And veterinary is in the negative. They ended fiscal year 2022 at negative 85,000. We are recommending a $25 increase to both their renewal and their initial application. The last time that their fees were touched were in 2026 for the application, and I believe we reduced their renewal in 2019. I would have to check. With these modifications, they still would be in the negative, but it would be better. So that is why we're making the recommendation.
They'd still be in the negative forevermore?
Yes, through our projections.
29.
29, yeah.
Representative Beck, sorry.
Are there any work professions that the Secretary of State is responsible for that aren't on this sheet? There's no, so this is everything.
That's all of our board professions.
Okay, and all of the different board professions, some are up, some are down, some are negative, some are positive. What's the net, the total of all those?
Of only the board professions, I don't know.
Okay.
If I look at the board professions and the advisor professions, we're net down.
By million?
1.5.
Million.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great.
I like to have numbers in my head.
I'm being corrected.
2.9?
2.5.
I don't know anything about veterinarians at all, except for some I've taken pets.
Yes.
Is there a shortage? Do they struggle with an ability to pay?
I think that veterinary medicine is, I do think there's a shortage. There's definitely a shortage in large animal vets in the state.
Yes, I knew that, yes.
I don't know about small animal vets. And veterinary medicine is generally a small business owner as well. And veterinary medicine also has significant student loan debt. I'm just giving you some stats about that. Significant student loan debt with less earning potential than other professions that have the same level of student loan debt.
Thanks.
So, do you guys want to move into the advisor pool? Or
I think
have
we do.
Okay.
Is everyone excited to move into the advisor pool?
Yeah.
Yeah, wait. Separate them.
Want to hold questions till the end of that?
No, is it a question about the board professions?
It is.
Go for it.
I am asking myself what my or our responsibility in reviewing these. It's not a tax, but it does contribute to the revenue of the state.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at the revenue. Let me pick on nursing. The entering the compact was controversial. There was a recommendation that the compact administration share licensing so that we wouldn't be where we are. But given where we are and given the policy commitment to have a compact, I feel my responsibility is to say, well, we can't tolerate not breaking even till the infinite tomorrow. And so I really sort of think I'm responsible to say I can't just rein in an increase for whatever reason because it wasn't our decision to go with the compact. And we were warned about that, the committee. But we're not the policy committee for compact, but we are the financial or fiscal agent, if you like, overseer. So I can't be comfortable with a fee increase that will never catch up with the demands, given the way the licensure renewal pattern has evolved with the compact. So that's where I am.
So I do believe this committee did vote affirmatively for the compact, very much so. And we'll have more coming to us. What I'm hoping is that we will learn something from the pooled model of the advisor fees that perhaps we can carry over to the board model as we sort of think about the future of fee structures. Because I agree, it does seem hard to say, yes, this will be negative for infinity. And I don't think raising fees too high on the nurses is a feasible move at this time either. So I'm hoping maybe there's a third way that we can find on our journey.
If I may just have a moment to ask Ms. Kessler to help me like an Excel, I'm not good. Can you unhide that?
Are we out of coffee? Odie, you don't have a copy. Oh, so we have a little bit of a,
Never mind, I think they're coming.
nope, that's the wrong one.
They're coming.
We just had a. Backlog. Would you like one?
So, if I could just pick up a thread from what you were just saying, Madam Chair, which is, I hope that we all learn and can understand some of the successes in the advisor pool and some of the ways that we can handle fees in a more equitable way and in a way that we can get towards an OPR fund. And I want to loop back to a question that Representative Sims asked about the board model versus the advisor model. And I just want to say that I think that there's options that we haven't even imagined yet. And I think it could be possible for the boards to pool their funds and keep the board model. But that would require a statutory change and probably a lot of thinking about that. And I don't want to lose that it is within the legislature's control that we keep the board models siloed. I do think there's value in the board model for some professions. So just in the conversation, I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
So the advisor pool was in the positive in the end of 2023. It was positive 780,000. But it starts to get into the negative in fiscal year.
We ended, you just said we ended 2023, but we're.
Ended in sorry.
Okay.
In 2022, we were positive 1.2.
Thanks.
In 2023, we're projected to end at 780. But we begin turning into the negative in 2025. And in 2025, we begin to be in the negative at minus 117. And it compiles quickly because this is a large number of licensees. And by 2029, we're in the negative 2.3, which is why we're recommending some of the adjustments. So here again, profession by profession in the advisor silo. So for acupuncturists, we're recommending an increase of $40 on the renewal and $15 on the application. The last time their fee was touched was in 2019. For alcohol and drug counselors, we're recommending an increase of $40 for renewal in each type and $25 in initial. The last time their fee was touched was in 2019. This is because we did a fee bill that touched almost every advisor profession in 19. Athletic trainers, we're recommending a fee increase of $30 for the renewal and $25 for the initial. Auctioneers, we're recommending an increase of $50 for renewal, $25 for initial. And then audiologists, the same, $50 for renewal and $25 for application. Barber and cosmetology, we're recommending a fee increase of $25 for the majority of the people and $50 for the businesses, with the exception of the School of Cosmetology, which is $60, and then 25 or 20. 25 for the initial, with the exception of the estheticians and the nail technicians, who typically make less than barbers and cosmetologists. Behavior analysts, we're recommending $40 for the renewal and $25 for the application. Boxing, $25 for both the renewal and the application. This will not have a huge impact on us because we only have 2 boxers. It's gonna be like not very.
They're gonna be mad.
Yeah, they're gonna be mad.
Their ability to pay is probably not.
MMA.
I'm grateful that you took boxing under your wing. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, that's different than the MMA, which comes down later.
Oh, okay. I was thinking of MMA.
That's very good.
Yeah, that's
I have a question about barbers and cosmetologists. I hope Representative Canfield will bear with me on this one. So cosmetologists make more because they charge more. And this is sort of one of the many areas of public life that it sort of makes up the pink tax, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm just I think I just have to say that out loud. I'm not sure what to do about it, but it's the fact that we're charging more because they make more, because they charge mostly women more.
Yeah.
It's just like a complicated place of public policy that I didn't want to glide on over.
So we are charging cosmetologists and barbers the same.
Great.
And I will just say that barbers do typically charge less, but they also have more people per hour. That's part of their model, is that they're able to do the cuts faster.
They're like 60 on a Monday, I've heard.
Yeah.
Saturday.
Sorry, never.
And you would never have a cosmetologist be able to cut that many people's hair in a day.
Great, thank you.
I should go to a barber.
Okay.
And what is a mobile cosmetology shop?
A mobile cosmetology shop is something that we're very proud of, that only one person has done, but it's an innovation where you can like rehab an RV and travel around the state doing services. Because you need to, in order to have a cosmetology or barber shop, you need to have some sanitary equipment, including a separate bathroom and sink and things like that. And this is a way to be able to provide those services while also being mobile, going to a nursing home or a festival, lots of ways that it could creatively be used.
So fun, thanks.
Yeah. We did that through administrative rulemaking and statutory change in 2019, and the administrative rules just went into effect, I think, in 2020. Yeah, it was something.
Only one.
There's only one.
Yeah, so far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you could open a mobile barber and just do lunchtime cuts out in the.
I think you'd
Right out
really
front,
like
you'd clean
bring
up.
them in.
That's enough.
I'd say no.
You reminded me of former member Helm.
Did he do a haircut?
No, he wanted to
Oh, he wanted
have
to
me
do
do
it.
it. He was gonna take a percentage.
Okay. I'm now on to dietitians. I'm now on to dietitians. Again, here we're recommending a fee increase for them. The last time their fees were touched was in 19 and 1997. And we're recommending a $25 increase to their initial and a $50 increase to their renewal. Electrology, similar. Foresters, similar. Funeral, a little bit more complicated. When they became a advisor model, their fees were projected to reduce in 2023. We are seeking to increase their fees despite that reduction. So for the disposition facility, we're recommending an increase, and for the funeral home, we're recommending an increase. Again, these are the institutions. For the embalmer and funeral director, we're recommending a $70 increase, and for the disposition personnel, those are the folks who are authorized to transport bodies to and from the disposition facility or funeral establishment or the crematorium. We're recommending a $25 increase. And then a $25 increase to the initial applications. For hearing aid dispensers, we're recommending a $40 increase and a $25 increase to the initial. For landscape architects, we're recommending a $50 increase and a $25 increase for the initial. For massage therapists, which are newly regulated with us, we're recommending a $50 increase to their renewal and a $25 increase for their initial. For midwifery, we're recommending a $40 increase for their renewal and $25 for their initial. Mixed martial arts, we're recommending a small increase. We just looked at these fees in 2021, which is when the profession was established. So $5 for the majority, with the exception of the promoter, which would be $25. And then a $25 increase for the application fee.
1 second. Got hands all around. Representative Demra.
You've already got 48 contestants in there?
Yes. Yeah.
Before they would have been in boxing, is that right?
Before they were unregulated,
And there was some situation.
there was some situations.
There was some situations.
That's a euphemism. Representative Taylor and then Maslin.
Just, what is a hearing aid dispenser?
Dispensers receive usually a prescription from an audiologist or a ear, nose, and throat doctor, and they fit a hearing aid in a consumer.
So the people working behind the counter in Costco's audiology department.
That's correct.
Would be, at least one of them would be something like that. Okay.
Yeah, what's the difference between a mixed martial arts contestant and participant?
So contestant is the person who's actually throwing the punches. A participant is the person who's saying that was a bad punch.
Okay. Right.
Well done.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, I'm sorry, I don't understand the difference.
It's like the difference between the
It's not the
person
difference
who's,
between a referee and the
it is,
contestant?
yeah,
Ah,
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
You only have one promoter?
That's correct. We have one.
Are they in Rutland County?
And one up in Newport last.
Can I talk to you off the record about that?
Offline conversation.
So onto motor vehicle racing.
Motor vehicle racing, we are recommending an increase in these fees, a fairly substantial increase, we think, given the revenue generated by these events, that they can tolerate the fee increase. So a $500 increase for the unlimited event permit. I will say that motor vehicle racing does hold a big cost for our office because we inspect the racing track to make sure that it is safe for both the drivers and the participants. And we do that multiple times throughout the season. And so the ability, it costs us money to regulate that profession in a very concrete way.
The person do you have a staff person who does that?
We do, yeah. We have two investigators, one of whom just told me the other day that he had the best job in all of state government, not to tell anybody. So here I am testifying about it. But they inspect pharmacies, cosmetology and barber shops, tattoo shops, electrology shops, funeral homes, motor vehicle racing. They do go to the MMA fights sometimes to make sure that the rules are being followed and that the right emergency personnel are there. And they have the authority to inspect real estate offices, but we don't do that frequently.
It really does sound like a lot of fun. Representative Beck.
So I'm just trying to so a driver would not pay any.
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, a driver will not pay. It is, Devil's Bowl and
Bear Ridge.
Bear Ridge.
Okay.
And like those little dirt tracks like in Bradford, that doesn't count. Is that Bear Ridge?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Right.
great, thank you.
And if I can just say that the annual event and the single event are usually the events that happen as part of fairs, demolition derbies, et cetera.
Whereas a track would have an unlimited event.
Right.
Okay, great. No, I've just driven back, actually.
Naturopathic physicians, we're recommending a $50 increase in their renewal and a $25 increase in their initial. Notaries, we're recommending, I'm gonna put a star next to notaries. I wanna make sure that our notaries is correct because we did increase the fees last year to 30 and 30. So I wanna just check. I don't know that we need to increase the fees there. I apologize for just seeing that now. Nursing home administrators, we're recommending a $40 increase in the renewal and a $25 increase in their initial. Occupational therapy, we are recommending a $30 increase for the renewals for occupational therapists and therapy assistants and a $25 increase in the initial. Optician, I cannot say the profession, opticianry. We're recommending a $40 increase for opticians for the renewal and a $20 increase for the trainee and a $25 increase for the initial for the optician and a $15 for the trainee. For physical therapists, I just want to note, have always played some of the lowest fees in the advisor pool. We are recommending an increase for them of $30 for the renewal and $25 for the application fee. PI and security was the other board that we recently made into an advisor pool, and that has also worked very well. We're recommending a $60 increase in the renewal for the agencies and a $25 or $30 increase for the individuals and that's all for the renewal and then $25 for the initial. This is why I love OPRs, because just think of all the diversity of all of these people and all of their scopes of practice that they do, and it's pretty amazing. Pollution abatement facility operators, where we are recommending an increase, a $50 increase to their renewal, a $25 for their initial. Similar for property inspectors, psychoanalysts, a little lower, $40 renewal and $25 initial. Again, sensitive to the fact that they are mental health providers. Rad tech, the rad technology profession, on whole, we're doing a $30 increase to the renewal, except for the physicians who receive a endorsement privilege for being able to use this technology on patients, and that's a $50 increase, and then a $25 increase in the initial. Sorry.
I really appreciate that we're hustling through here, and I have no idea what a pollution abatement facility is. Does everyone else in the room know what a pollution abatement facility is? Okay.
There's
Wastewater
449 of them though.
Yeah, so my understanding is they are the people who work in our wastewater treatment facilities.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Fantastic.
And some other small variations, but I think that's primarily where they work.
Great.
Real estate appraisers, very sensitive to the fact that this is an increase for them. I would feel like I need to tell this committee, we are having a workload shortage of real estate appraisers right now, in large part because of the housing explosion. But on whole, we're recommending an increase for them of 50 to 60 for the renewal and 25 for the initial.
We've spent a remarkable amount of time talking about appraising.
Oh, great.
recently, and so I want to consult with PBR about sort of their efforts to grow that field.
Residential home contractors, we are recommending an increase in their fees. It's a bit odd because they haven't even, the requirement to be registered isn't even fully in effect yet. They renew in odd years, so they will not see this fee impact until 2025, which is why we are asking for their fees to be adjusted. So a $50 increase to the business, 15 for the individual, and 15 for the certifications, and then $5 more for every additional certification. Respiratory care practitioners, the $40 for the renewal and 25 for the initial. For the licensed independent clinical social worker and the master's social worker, a $30 increase for each for renewal and 25 for initial. Again, here they are a profession that's been lower in the advisor pool historically. You'll see that we're asking for a lower increase for them as well. Speech language pathologists, a $40 increase to the renewal and a $25 increase for the initial. Tattoo and body piercing, there's many different types here. We are recommending a $50 increase for tattooists, shops, apprentices, both types of shops, the body piercing and tattoo, and then only the tattoo. And then 25 for the initial. Wastewater and system designers, $50 increase to their renewal and a $25 increase to their initial. And then well drillers, similarly, 50 for renewal and 25 for initial. That's all I got.
Okay, great. We're done. Representative Andrews.
If I might, I just wanted to note that up at the top of this schedule, alcohol and drug abuse counselors, I think that is also, in my book, like a mental health provider category that we're woefully in need of, so.
I agree, and that is one of the reasons why they only have a $40 increase instead of a $50. I should have mentioned that one. I will say that you will see some historical legislative decisions. So when the legislature decided to start regulating social workers, they brought them in at a much lower fee than they did when we started regulating alcohol and drug counselors. So that fee disparity exists now. And this doesn't solve that, but we are trying to keep it in mind.
So you met with Commissioner Gresham.
We did, yes.
So were there any key professional licenses or fees that you were going to waive to help the, I can't think of the workforce development?
So we did not get into that level of detail with him. It was a very high level budget conversation about the higher lines of our budget. I do know that we have talked with the governor's team before about some waiving of fees for workforce development. You know, at some points we've talked about, could we waive all nursing fees for a period of time? Could we, there's been multiple conversations along those lines. And the only way that OPR can do that is if we receive a general fund allocation. And we've talked about that with them and sometimes with the legislature. And that particular movement has never happened.
Thank you.
I do think of the compacts as a workforce development
I think the
policy tool
yes.
more than anything else.
Yes, they are. And very sound public policy, but with a fiscal impact for the state. And I look forward to talking about that more. Thanks.
Representative Brennan?
So, I still don't understand how you're making ends meet. Because so many of these categories you were not coming up to level water. You weren't coming up to make any money at all. And so where do the funds come from to pay your staff? Is there something I missed in the explanation?
No, I think I may have to come back to explain that or bring my the person for the Secretary of State's office who manages our whole budget. I don't think I think my understanding, and please, let me correct this because I may be wrong and she's watching, so she's going to tell me I'm wrong. But my understanding is that we essentially ask the state through budget allocation, through the budget process with Gresham, for permission to spend. And then we are able to spend what we ask for us to spend. And we've asked to spend more than the money that's in our fund, and the state on whole is carrying us a little bit with that spending. But I feel right now like I'm like gonna trip over my skis. So I'd like to
Don't do that.
so I'd like to just get some more talking points and come back to you and talk to you about that, because I don't but I think that's how we're doing.
Okay. I can wait.
Okay, thank you.
Don't get yourself in trouble. Get somebody else in trouble.
I don't want to, if all my failings are mine, so.
And so sort of ideas to sit with here. The board fees that do not cover those boards. You mentioned the idea of possibly pooling all of it. I think that's interesting. Another sort of idea that I was thinking about was sort of like how you have an administrative fee within the fee that you pull out, that there could be also a labor shortage fee that you pull out that gets moved into other funds, or something like that, as a way of sort of balancing those who can pay more and can't. But we can keep on talking about that.
Yeah, lots. And if I can just say, I don't know whether we're gonna be able to do that larger analysis in this session.
Yeah.
And I'm hopeful that if it's not too presumptuous to say, I'm hopeful that this committee might think about asking us and JFO to do some work on this in the interim. Because it's clear we need something, to me, it's clear, we need something this session, but that whatever we do is not the long-term solution. Thanks.
Forgive me if you've already said this, but do we have like bottom line numbers here? If we made all the recommended changes, how much are we making up? What is the ongoing shortfall across both the board and advisory?
Okay. So Agatha Kessler has just helped me again. And if we make all of those adjustments, then we would be in a better place. We'd be at $1 million more in the positive. So
all the changes would generate a net 1 million.
Agatha, you're welcome to like, yeah.
For the record.
Yeah.
So it would, we would go from, well, we have it would go from, let me just scroll up to see the fiscal year headings on the top. So we would, instead of being minus 2.5 million, it'd be minus 1.5 million. So it would bring us up about $1 million. And it is, the assumption is that we're assuming a 3% increase in expenses year over year. And because our budget office is probably watching, they'd like it to seem like 8%. But Lauren is very dedicated to controlling costs. Our three biggest drivers are rent, staff, and our IT system, and she's working very hard on that. And budget office told us yesterday they can already see the decrease. So we're assuming a 3% increase in expenses.
So I think that emphasizes what you just said. If we're not even having the problem, this is not a solution.
Right. This is a Band-Aid, not the solution.
And I am curious about, because I know that a few of them were going to be in a better place by 2029. So I'd be curious to see what those differences are in 2029 too. We don't need to do that right now though.
I don't know if I have that level of detail for you right now, but
I don't need it right now. It's fine. Representative Anthony?
I was just looking at the statute and the kind of guidance, what there is. And it's generally framed against cross-subsidy.
That's correct.
And it's, if there is a robbing Peter to pay Paul, it's limited to 2 years. And there's almost no guidance paralleling your discretion. And I would feel awkward trying to decide, well, those people make a little more and they, doing, in essence, evaluative ability to pay kind of decisions ad hoc. No statute, there's nothing there. And I feel a little embarrassed for somebody asked to do that without any guidance. I believe in delegation, but I believe in standards.
Do you have, Madam Chair?
Yes.
So what kind of data do you have to show median, mean, average?
So we look at the Department of Labor's statistics on professions and earning potential.
We are all going to go to the floor now, and thank you very